So, yesterday there was a lot of discussion of bodhicitta, of aspiration, an aspiration for realization, awakening, liberation that will take place sometime in the future. And so, when we draw forth an aspiration about some future goal, because that's what it is, of course it takes us out of the present. And there's great meaning in that. To have a direction for one's life and not simply be like so confined to the present that you have no vision of what's coming. You know, here and now is all very well, but here and now, if here and now just has no direction to it, it's just a bunch of here and nows. I think that's what I'm guessing. That's what a cockroach or a earthworm or a rat would experience, or a marmot. My favorite was a marmot sitting on a rock, just. Here and now, open presence, non-judgmental awareness. It's very well, but I don't think it's Dharma. But there's also a very present-centered way of bringing Dharma in, and that is, as Geshe Taige told me long ago after I'd been studying with him for some months, I asked him, what is Dharma? Because I'd heard the term so many times. And you kind of get an idea, even without defining it. But I asked him, what is Dharma? And he said, it's a way of viewing reality, a way of engaging with reality that brings forth a lasting, a sustainable sense of well-being. That's just ordinary speech. There's no Buddhist terminology there. And of course what he's referring to is eudaimonia, what we would call eudaimonia in Greek, eudaimonia, or in Buddhism, Dambe Dewa, sublime well-being, or Yandape Dewa, authentic well-being, sustainable well-being. We have a lot of emphasis nowadays on sustainable economies. It's very good and very important. And because we don't want to be just relying on something that's going to deplete us and then leave us impoverished at the end of the day. That would be a really good idea for the planet. And in a similar vein, and something very closely related, sustainable happiness, sustainable well-being. There are types of well-being that are not sustainable, right? Because as we pursue it, hedonic, as we pursue it, it gets exhausted. We get exhausted. And then when it's finished, it's just finished. And all you have is a memory of pleasure that you used to have and no longer do, you know? And there's something very ephemeral about happiness you no longer experience. Very abstract, very thin, very illusory. So eudaimonia, as I've defined this for quite some time now, I think completely in accordance with the Buddhist teachings, this eudaimonia, or genuine well-being, is, of course, a sense of well-being that arises independently of pleasant stimulation, right? So nothing nice needs to happen to you, in response to which you feel pleasure. But without any particular stimulation, a sense of well-being is already coming up, and that's eudaimonia. Whereas hedonia is any type of pleasure that arises in response to some stimulation, whether it's sensory, intellectual, or chemical, alcohol, drugs, and so forth and so on. So in this practice, this simple practice, I mean, it's so incredibly simple, and yet I find so just rich with insights that flow out of it, or the significance, the meaning of it. And that is, this practice, mindfulness of breathing, when we're attending to it, we're really not seeking and probably won't find much in the way of pleasant stimulation. I mean, the breath is really like just kind of like this glass of water. I mean, it's nice, but I'm not going to get attached to it. I'm not going to say, give me more, give me more, give me more. You know, it's nice, but not that nice. It's okay. You know, it's water. And likewise, the sensations of the breath are kind of like, they're not bad, but they're not like you get fixed on, like you want to hyperventilate because you just enjoy it so much. And so when beginners venture into mindfulness breathing, I think the most common experience people have is after, the novelty wears off, after about 3 or 4 seconds. One breath, 2 breaths. The second one was pretty much like the first one, and I think I know how the third one's going to turn out. Kind of like the second one and the first one. And I don't think it gets any more interesting. It's just same old. That the first thing is boredom. Boredom. This is just not interesting. I thought meditation was going to be fun. I mean, that's why people do it, right? It's fun. And this isn't fun. So maybe I should find something else. At least a mantra could be interesting. Something. Maybe a visualization. Something. Because, man, this is boring. And I paid good money to this. I mean, I was already breathing. You know? Why did I pay this guy money to... I mean, this is a scam. This gotta be a scam. I'm paying good money to learn how to follow that was already there. At least you couldn't give me some deluxe, deluxe breath to attend to. I have my own breath. This is really a scam. And it's boring. And so that's the first, and the quality of being bored is withdrawal symptoms. It really is. Literally, I think it's withdrawal symptoms. It's not severe. I spoke with somebody recently who just had gone off of nicotine after a long period of smoking, and it completely cut the smoking. And the withdrawal symptoms were really, really unpleasant. I think psychological and physical, really difficult. Let alone cocaine or other, really addictive drugs. Well, these are drugs. Alcohol, withdrawal from that, I'm certain, can have repercussions. But we're talking about something much more ubiquitous, and that is addiction to the pursuit of hedonia. Addiction to stimulation. And frankly, from my perspective, I don't think humanity has ever been more addicted to stimulation than we are right now. If we consider 200,000 years of humanity, and the kind of entertainment we had until, let's say, the 20th century, entertainment was what? Singing, playing a flute, dancing, sex, of course, food. But now, the range of entertainment is just staggering. And something's coming. Watch for it in the next 10 years, virtual reality. That's going to be really something. The technology, of course, is going very, very fast. And it's going to be multimodal. It's not only going to be audio-visual, they're going to bring in the tactile. And they'll bring the olfactory, the gustatory. In other words, it's perfect escapism. The better that technology that gets, you can just be launching yourself into a Deva realm. And man, you can just piss away your life that way. Just squander it completely. I mean, people already do it with internet, with television, video games, and so forth and so on. But this is going to raise it to a whole other dimension. But stimulation. We are addicted to stimulation. Modernity, more so than any other civilization in history, I think. And so when we would disengage from the stimulation, that which excites us, arouses us, interests us, novelty, and we go back to just the opposite of all that, 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. The first one is, wow, this is boring. Jeez. And we get restless and so forth and so on. But if we can relax into that, because this is the thing, don't try to make it interesting. Don't try harder. Don't try to jazz it up. Like anything, anything. And just relax. And if you can find, ever heard this one? Give peace a chance. It's a bumper sticker, it's a song, it's 1960s, it's my generation, baby. Give peace a chance, There is no way to peace, peace is the way. Remember our wonderful slogans from the 1960s? They really work for this. There's no way to peace. Peace is the way in Shamatha. And so if you can just get through the surf, the boredom, the restlessness, the agitation, the disappointment, the frustration, the anger, the irritation, the resentment. I'm just sitting here and saying, crap, this sucks. This totally sucks. And then you look around, everybody else is saying, they're probably having a good time, but boy, for me, this just totally sucks. If you can get through that, just by relaxing into it, releasing into it, and give peace a chance. I'm actually serious. Give peace a chance, and that is, rather than going for more stimulation, and the easiest type of stimulation is called wandering mind. It's free, and it's involuntary, and it's your mind's desperate attempt to entertain itself when all you're giving it is breathing in, breathing out, and the mind says, I can do better than this. Hence it goes on vacations, even a bad vacation. Like this person really pisses me off and I really hated that. This is at least interesting. Opposed to in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, If you can get through that and just give peace a chance of just releasing, relaxing, then you may find that in a very subtle way, the peace and quiet of a mind that's getting a bit calm is preferable to the agitation, the disturbance, the stimulation of a wandering mind, an agitated mind. You might find, well, okay, if those are my only two choices, then yeah, I kind of like the serenity better, the sense of ease. Yeah, that's better. I mean, just that, it's just so draining to have a mind that is just caught up in one after another compulsive, obsessive thought, memory, etc., etc. It's just draining. There's nothing really entertaining about it, It's like the, what do they call them? Those channels where they just try to sell stuff you all the time. I mean, if you really, I assume people actually watch them voluntarily. What do they call those channels? Yeah, like video. Infomercial. Yeah, but just all the shopping channels. Yeah. I mean, how bored do you need to be to sit down? Let's watch television and watch a shopping channel. I think this is kind of like a call for help. 911, It's either suicide or this. I mean, I'm really absolutely desperate, but I'm going to go for the shopping channel. Really, I am stunned that there are such things. It's like the story of the electric shock business. People who are sitting in a room for 15 minutes with no stimulation, and 2/3 of the men would rather shock themselves rather than sit quietly for 15 minutes with no stimulation, and 1/4 of the women. So in any case, get to the point here, and that is, if you can weather it, if you can give peace a chance and just enjoy releasing and relaxing and releasing and relaxing, and then see if you can ward off drowsiness, dullness, because taking a nap is fine, but that's not why we meditate. If you can do that, then you can find some peace, and you might find this is actually preferable. I like this better than just the agitation, the draining, and so forth. About 80% of rumination has been found to be unpleasant by scientists who've studied it. Unpleasant. So this is better than that. At least it's not unpleasant. And then if you can kind of cross that watershed of just sheer boredom to this is better than rumination, and I don't really need a nap, and then it starts to go into peace, and you're giving peace a chance, and you're preferring it. Then from there, as we follow the teachings of the Buddha with respect to mindfulness breathing, he said, when developed and cultivated, it gives rise to a state that is peaceful. There it is, the first thing. Preferable to agitation, lack of peace, distress, restlessness, and so forth. And then he goes from there to sublime. This is right in the Pali Canon. It gives rise to a state that is peaceful, and then he says sublime. And I will interpret that as referring to sukha, well-being, a sense of well-being. It's not bliss, it's not ecstasy, but it's a sense of just that. It's a nice translation of well-being, like, oh, like this is a sign of health. This is kind of like, oh, my mind's getting balanced. This feels good compared to not balance. This is nice. I feel well. I feel like this is kind of like, this must be what sanity's like. And then it goes from peaceful to sublime, and then an ambrosial dwelling, according to the Buddha. And the ambrosial dwelling I will interpret as, in Sanskrit, priti, which is the bliss. Bliss, joy, delight. You're really enjoying the practice. And it's no longer fueled by patience and diligence and discipline, it's fueled by enthusiasm, because you really enjoy it. And then you can't get enough of it, And then just to complete the Buddha's synopsis of the benefits of this practice, and he said it dispels in an instant, when you really cultivate this quality of awareness, you're enhancing the psychological immune system of your mind, so that when mental afflictions come knocking on your door, like a virus, like being next to a person who has a cold and they sneeze right in your direction, you don't get a cold. You could, if your immune system is down, you'll get a cold, you'll be sneezing and be miserable for a week. But if your immune system is up and they sneeze right at you and the virus has come in, if your immune system is really robust, it just fights it off and says, no thank you. And that's physical immune system, and this is mental immune system. Cultivate this, exceptional balance of the mind. And even when, like the 5 obscurations, they come knocking on the door, you ward them off. They can't get a grip, they can't invade. They can't infect you. They come up, but then they fade out. So that's quite extraordinary. So as long as we have the route of pursuing hedonia, or cultivating eudaimonia, and the pursuit of hedonia is meaningful. That is, if you're hungry, you should get something to eat. If you're cold, get clothing. If you're injured, you get medical care. If you have no education, you should get some, right? Tibetan Lamas often say that. Do get an education. Don't just drop your education and go after Dharma. You need education. You're going to be coming back someplace. You'll want some education. How much? Well, that's, something to be discussed. But don't skip it. Not in the 21st century. So what's that whole point of pursuing hedonia? Food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, and education. Following St. Thomas Aquinas. It's so you can start Lamrim. And start Lamrim by meditating upon and taking full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. Right? First meditation. But it's hard to do that if you're hungry, if you're ill, if you're injured, and so forth. It's hard. Not impossible, but it's hard. But if you've taken care of your hedonic needs, and that's relative to context, in some areas you need a car, other ones you don't, and so forth, then you're ready for the big show, what human life is all about, what our human intelligence is all about. Not just to be extremely good at hedonia and make better and better entertainment, but then to get down ready to the meaning of life. As long as one is fixated on, like single-pointedly, like a deer staring into the headlights, into the pursuit of hedonic pleasure, success, worldly success, relationships, and so forth and so on, then that will obscure the bliss, luminosity, non-conceptuality of your own substrate consciousness. Of course it will obscure the wellspring of your own rikpa, because you're attending to something else. You're busy. You're busy. Right? And so the simple practice of mindful breathing is so simple, but it opens a door to like this vast panorama of Dharma. And that is, if we can get accustomed to being content without stimulation, and then find a sense of well-being there, even a sense of joy there, then this is the joy that the Buddha said, do not be afraid of the joy of samadhi. He said the bliss of samadhi is not to be feared, right? So don't get all, I'll be attached to it, give it a rest. You're already attached to so many other stuff. Try this one as an alternative, because this one can open up to much deeper things. So that's the first point. You'll recall among the 5 obscurations, the very first one is fixation on hedonia. And that will obscure this pabhasa-citta, this brightly shining mind. That will obscure your own natural resources of your substrate consciousness, let alone rikpa. Right? So that's one point. That this really opens the doorway to the cultivation of eudaimonia in general, because we're not fixating on more stimulation. We can use meditation as simply one more form of stimulation. Let's bring to mind happy thoughts. Let's bring to mind really beautiful visualizations. Let's do mantras. Let's ring bells. Let's bring dhammarus. Let's do stuff that keeps us really active and dharmically stimulated. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at what point do you kind of give it a rest? Because all of that activity was for the sake of allowing the natural resources of your own Buddha nature to flow forth. Just to slip over to a much higher dimension, rikpa, Dzogchen. I've read this so many times in the writings of Dujum Lingpa. He's speaking from the perspective of a person who's dwelling in rikpa. Right? So he's there. He's not the marmot just sitting with an open mind. He's dwelling in rikpa, viewing reality from that perspective. He's looking back on the path of effort. It's called tsulche ki lam, the path involving effort, striving to transform the mind, striving to purify the mind, striving to develop virtues, the striving of the stage of generation and stage of completion. And he said, that looks so exhausting. If you could only just wake up, then you see all these virtues would arrive of themselves, and all the obscurations dissipate of themselves. Rangdo, they release themselves. And Rangjung, all the virtues, compassion, wisdom, will self-emerge. So, you're working so hard, you poor ones. You poor things. It's such an arduous path because, of course, you're practicing from the perspective of being a sentient being, which means you have an awful lot to do. But if you're simply resting in your own Buddha nature, there's nothing to do except that which arises spontaneously out of your Buddha nature. So there's a parallel there. Final point, and then we'll jump in. I was leading a Shamatha retreat in Spain just recently, and one fellow, and I was talking about the issue that came up earlier. Andreas is very much in my mind, and others as well. Just facing these upheavals that arise in the body, the upheavals that arise in the mind, the nyam, some of them quite unpleasant, as discussed before. And I cited the Vajra essence, saying, you have to go through a lot of difficulties to find the path. And that's just part of the path. You have to deal with what's there. And so when you're going deeper along the path of shamatha, you will be dredging your psyche, you'll be bringing forth somatic experiences of wide variety, and don't expect them all to be pleasant. Some will be really quite awful, some pleasant, some just weird. And so he says it, he said it very clearly. But then somebody in retreat in Spain said, is there any way to bypass that? Is there any way to bypass that? And we're referring specifically to settling the mind as a natural state, where you're facing right to the mind, and right where all these nyam, these emotions, desires, memories, all the mental addictions, you're just right where they're coming up, right there where they're being catalyzed and brought to the surface, right where you've opened Pandora's box, you're gazing right there. So if they come up, it's right in your face, and it's in your face day after day after day, month after month, and retreat 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And he said, is there a bypass? Can you kind of get around that? And the answer is, yeah, in fact there is. Yeah, I'm not kidding at all. There is bypass. And there's a bypass also if you're going into mindfulness of breathing and taking this in the mode of settling the mind in its natural state and being aware of the range of somatic experiences. And that will also be dredging, bringing up all kinds of stuff. Some of it can be very unpleasant as you're encountering the blockages, the knots, the constrictions, and so forth. The imbalances in the body, and they're manifesting, they're probably not going to be pleasant. So is there a bypass? And the answer is yes. There are bypasses. I'll give just 2. There are people who by disposition find devotion, faith, worship, reverence, all of these come very naturally. I know such people. And many of them find a home in Christianity. It's like, welcome home, we have a place for you. And you find it in Hinduism, a lot, bhakti, devotional practice. And of course you find it in Buddhism as well, in all schools. There are Theravada Buddhists, very strong devotion, Mahayana, and so forth and so on. And so if one is either comes to the Dharma with that, or as a result of one's Dharma practice, one finds the heart really opening, and faith, devotion, reverence, worship really arising. For such a person who's either brought that to Dharma, or this is coming out of the Dharma practice, if such a person, now in the Buddhist context, brings to mind an image of the Buddha, generates an image of the Buddha, with a very rich understanding of the life of the Buddha, the deeds of the Buddha, the qualities of the Buddha, the blessings of the Buddha, the lineage of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. You bring this symbol, this archetypal form right behind me to mind, and it's kind of like Christians would often say, looking on the face of the beloved. They use that metaphor a lot, especially nuns, and it's quite sublime. And men also, quite sublime. It's divine love. Palms together. And that can be very, very powerful. So the same thing that can happen in Christianity, and has many, many times, it's happened many, many times in Buddhism as well. So if one has that type of faith, that type of adoration, and you bring an image of the Buddha, or it could be Padmasambhava or Tara, and so forth, to mind, and the heart just opens with that, then you long to gaze upon the face of the beloved. And because it's not just a beautiful image, it is a beautiful image, but we're not talking about hedonic here. Oh, isn't she pretty? Or isn't Padmasambhava really macho? It's looking much deeper into that. What is it to be Tara? What is it to be Padmasambhava? Buddha Shakyamuni, Tsongkhapa, and so forth. So with that type of devotion, one might find, and people do find, that sustains you, that gives you the juice, the motivation to go deeper into shamatha, using that as your meditative object, right? It really, and it fills with joy, because you're looking upon your object of refuge. Very powerful. And some people are also naturally gifted for visualization. So bring those together, you have a real winning package. So you can imagine, let's say you're that type of person, let's say you're gifted in terms of visualization, some people are. And then one way or another, you're gifted in terms of this type of devotion. You bring these two together, and let's say simply focusing on Buddha Shakyamuni. Then could you, focusing on that meditative object, could you proceed along the 9 stages of Shamatha and achieve Shamatha? Well, the answer is unequivocally yes. Tsongkhapa describes this in great detail, and so is it described in all schools of Tibetan Buddhism, and going back to India itself. Now, if that's what you're focusing on, you're focusing on the Buddha image, and you're seeking to sustain it with greater continuity, and then gradually greater clarity, high definition, and so forth, and you're doing it with that sense of ease, which is coming from your devotion, your faith, your love, That's not uptight. If you're doing it sheer as a visualization exercise, that can tie you in knots. And it's just sheer work, oh man, like that. But no. If that's what you're focusing on, and you're just going deeper, proceeding right along the path, and that's the single-pointed focus of your attention, will your mind get dredged in the process? Yeah, it has to. Will the somatic experiences be arising in the body as you're dredging, purifying, balancing? Yeah, it will. The dredging will take place, somatically and psychologically. But that's not what you're attending to. That's going to be background noise. That's going to be outside the focus of your attention. So it's coming up. But it's rather more like the rock quarry noise. It's not our business. It's not our business. We don't have to be concerned with it. There's no danger there. Let it rise, let it pass, no big deal. So it can go whatever, it doesn't matter. This is our focus here. So let him come, let him go. Not my problem. And you achieve shamatha. So your mind is getting healed, your body is getting healed, and you don't have to look at the process. It happens without you looking at it. Right? So that's a bypass. That's a bypass. You're just following this kind of quite blissful path of attending to the Buddha. It gets more and more vivid until you come to stage 9, stage 8, and those who have accomplished this say, as you attend to this mentally generated image of the Buddha, number one, it's not just a visualization exercise. You are, as Karma Chagmé said yesterday, really attending to this as the actual presence of the Buddha, not just a mental image. So you have that sense of being in the midst of the sacred. And it becomes, the adepts who have achieved this say, it becomes so high definition that it's as if you're looking at the Buddha with your own eyes. This is not too hard to imagine when you're dreaming. If you're having a really vivid dream, a Buddha could appear in your dream. And the Buddha could appear in your dream as vivid as you're seeing with your own eyes. We've all had dreams, I think, that are so vivid you can't imagine you're dreaming. I have. I think everybody has, right? So why shouldn't this happen then in meditation when you develop that kind of focus? So there's one kind of bypass. Now briefly, another kind, because time is running out, another type is awareness of awareness. That's going to be right on our trajectory here. And this is for people who are fascinated by the very nature of awareness, want a fast track, direct track to Mahāmudrā and Dzogchen. They're fascinated by the very phenomenon of consciousness, and they say, that's what I want to do. I just want to rest in awareness of awareness. And you do that. This means that whatever somatic experiences arise, they're out there in the periphery. It's the clatter of the rock quarry. And whatever psychological stuff coming up, memories, emotions, desires, clatter of the rock quarry. Who cares? You don't give it any attention at all. Say, knock yourself out. I'm busy. Busy doing nothing. I'm busy resting in awareness, and whatever's happening in my mind, I don't care. I just don't care. I don't have to care about everything. I care about resting in awareness, fathoming awareness, dissolving my mind into the substrate consciousness. That's what I care about. But whatever particular emotions, desires, blah, 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 who cares? It's just one person's mind, one person's personal history. Who cares? I don't care. So mind, heal yourself, but I'm busy. Body, sort yourself out, but I'm busy. There you are. So you bypassed it. It's out on the periphery. It's happening, but you're not deliberately giving any attention to it. Right? So to conclude on this point, and then we'll jump in because time is almost out, then why look at this stuff? Why practice settling the mind at all when you can just bypass? Why practice mindfulness of breathing and be vividly aware of the somatic nyam, or upheavals that are occurring in the body? And I think there's actually a very good reason. And now they've given, I think, a good pitch for focusing on a Buddha image, on awareness of awareness. They're magnificent practices. But why go to this trouble of facing, just seeing all the dirty laundry coming up in the mind and all the grime coming up in the body. And the reason for it is insight. It's insight, it's real simple. And that is if, as these psychological nyam are coming up, and the somatic nyam are coming up, if you're not just caught up and carried away by them, you're resting in the stillness of your awareness and you're perceiving them come and go, the stillness and motion business. You're seeing them come and go, you're seeing them as impermanent, you're seeing them as not true sources of happiness, but in fact unsatisfactory by nature, dukkha. You're seeing them simply arising, having no owner, no possessor, not belonging to anyone. You're seeing them as just events arising and passing back into space. You're doing that by either settling the mind or mindfulness of breathing. Well, by the time you finish with that, including maybe some very intense experiences, really strong emotions, very, very traumatic memories coming up, intense stuff coming up in the body, if you can maintain your awareness like that unflickering candle flame, boy, that's shamatha with a bonus. Because when you come out, your shamatha is going to be the same. You achieve shamatha, the 5 obscurations are down, the 5 jhana factors are up. Doesn't matter how you got there. The substrate consciousness is the same, no matter how you get there. All roads lead to Rome. Now we can find the country where it says that. All shamatha practices lead to the substrate consciousness, And it's the same substrate consciousness. Hinayana, Mahayana, Christian, Zen, doesn't matter. It's the same one. But how you get there matters. Because when you come out of the substrate consciousness, what perks, what added benefits did you get? Well, each of these has added benefits. If you've been focusing on a Buddha image, you may be able to count on that image when you're dying, and that would be a very good companion. To be holding the Buddha image as you're dying, and hold that, and that's your last thought. And then you slip in. Oh, a nice way to go. That's going to turn out well, Not just the Buddha image, but with the devotion and all of that. If you have gotten there by way of awareness, and you die in that mode, well, you're ready to slip right into the death zone, lucidly. That's good. But likewise, if you have settled the mind in its natural state of mindfulness of breathing, you're going to come out just with such a rich history of insight into the fundamental characteristics of the mind that when you come out of samadhi and you're engaging with the world, everyone around you, you're going to bring those insights to that. Because when you're engaging with people in between sessions, nasty people, nice people, and so forth, adversity and felicity, the mind's going to be activated again, and you're going to have months and months of momentum of being able to view this without the cognitive fusion. And you're bound to get sick, you're bound to get injured, you're bound to get old, and stuff is going to happen to the body. And you're going to have months and months of momentum of being able to be present with what's arising in the body and not caught in its grip. Now, isn't that amazing? That these simple practices, we're just talking about kindergarten here. This is just shamatha. You've seen the bigger picture. This is shamatha. This little bitty shamatha. But it's opening a door to a vastness. It's truly amazing. Let's go practice.